Hi and welcome to the workshop. In my last video I was covering the building of a shooting board. I think most people followed along okay, but I did get one comment suggesting that it wasn't simply enough for novice woodworkers to understand what a shooting board was, how I was making it and how to use it. Now I did plan on doing a follow-up video showing the uses of it and different ways to set it up and the reason why I put a second fence on mine. But just to address any points for people who didn't understand what was going on, I'm going to cover a really simple shooting board and the use of a simple one in this video. I'm going to add this to the Woodworking for Beginners series, so I'll do titles for that in a moment and I'll go straight into it after that. And in a couple of weeks or so I'll cut this off in YouTube so it just plays as a normal Woodworking for Beginners video. So let's get on with it. Hi and welcome back to Woodworking for Beginners. When you're making anything, you're going to start off with components, and in most cases those components will want to have square edges to them and they'll want to have square ends to them. So if you think about making the rails for a table, that's one of the things you want to start out with. Now, how do you do that? I've shown various videos on using planes and how you can do that freehand with a plane, but a jig that really helps, especially when you're a beginner, is the shooting board. So I'm going to show you how to make a really simple shooting board and how to use it. So let me introduce you to the jig that's going to help us, and that is the shooting board. This is a very simple one, but it will do most of the things that you need. We've got a long length of board. Ordinarily I would use MDF, but I've used a piece of pine here. The only important thing is that it's the same thickness right across and it's nice and flat and has one straight edge to it, or reasonably straight edge. Now you can see what I've done here is attached a block. That's our fence, we call it a fence or a stop block. That's simply screwed in from the back. Now the easiest way to do that is to put the two pieces together, drill one hole for a screw and screw that in quite tight, then use a square off the edge and align that block, pivoting it on the screw until it's square. Once it's square you can drill through and put another couple of screws in to stop the whole thing from moving. So a very easy thing to do there. You'll also notice on the end here I've put a block of wood on the underside of the board which acts as a hook. Now you can put this on either end or you don't need one at all. The reason I've put it on this end is because I've got a vise here into which I can slot it and tighten that down, which holds the shooting board in position for every operation I need it for. Now you might not have a vise, or it might be at the other end of your bench, so you could put that stop at the other end. If you've got no vise to hold it on, you can just use a pair of clamps, positioning those wherever is suitable. So everything's nice and sound. The plane itself just runs against the edge of the board. Now it rides on the bench, so I tend to put a little bit of wax on the top of the bench before I start. That makes it glide nice and easily. The shooting board works because planes are manufactured with edges, sides that are square to the base. So when you lay a plane on its side, you should find that the sole, bottom of the plane, is at 90 degrees to a flat surface. Now you can see here, it's not exactly, but it's very close. The fact that it's slightly out means that we can use this lever at the back of the plane, the lateral adjuster, which just tilts the blade slightly either way. So, getting back to the shooting board, if our plane is sitting on its side on the bench, and we jut it up to the board, run it backwards and forwards, then our cutting edge should be running perpendicular to the bench along the edge of the board. Now we don't know for certain that it's exactly perpendicular, and what we can do is check for that. It's by taking a piece of scrap, setting that up at the edge of the board, so it just juts over a little bit. A couple of mil is all we really need. Now if I run my plane along the side of there, it's going to take a shaving. Is it at 90 degrees? Well, we don't know. The first thing we need to make sure though is that we take a shaving right across the edge. So if we mark in pencil right the way across in a few places, and holding the plane down towards the bench and also against the workpiece, just run a couple of shavings. Now those pencil marks have all gone, so that means I've taken a shaving right across that width, and we were aiming for it to be square to this face. So we'll check that with the square, hold it up to the light, have a look through, and if that's not quite square, then we'll adjust the plane iron using the lateral adjuster. So pushing it down will push the bottom of the blade in a bit, or pulling it up will pull the top of the blade in a bit. So that's how we adjust whether we're taking more material off the top edge or the bottom edge. And it's just a case of adjusting, making another cut, testing it until you get it spot on. Easy as that. Once you've done that, plane and the shooting board are all set up ready for doing what you want to do. We want to make a square edge to the face of this board, so we will need to set this up on the edge, and we want it to hang over a few mil. I'm just using the clamps here to give me a stop in this direction, and the stop that I've put on here, the fence on here, stops the work going in that direction. If we mark this with pencil as well, we'll know when we're completed. All the pencil's gone, that edge should be square, which it is. So that's how to produce a square edge, as simple as that. And bear in mind, if we were trying to do that just on a bench up against the stop, we've got all the possibility of the plane freehand going in any direction at all. And I can guarantee you there's nobody in woodworking who can do 10 out of 10 planing an edge at 90 degrees and getting them all spot on. It'll always be one way or the other. One of them will be inaccurate. Whereas if you use a jig like this, shooting board method, that's going to be 90 degrees all the time. The other thing we want to do is plane the end of the board at 90 degrees. And this one isn't quite 90, so what we're going to use is the fence or the stop. We'll move our clamp out the way. We would put what is the face edge up against the fence, hang the edge over the end, and run the plane along the shooting board like this, past the fence, and advance the work up to the sole of the plane, and then you should hear it cutting. And there we have 90 degrees. Now you might notice from the way we've done that, it is possible to do other angles. Move this clamp out the way. You can make yourself any different wedges at different angles. Simply hold your workpiece on the wedge at a different angle and plane away. For shallower angles, shallower wedges, like so. Now, one of the things I often get asked is, if you keep running the plane up the side of the shooting board, do you not plane it away? And the answer to that is, when you first set your shooting board up, first time you move the plane along the edge, you'll probably take a little bit of shaving part the way up. And the reason for that is the blade doesn't extend all the way down to the bottom. So when you take a shaving, it can't cut all the way down. And I'll show you that. Let's take this piece of wood. There's a nice clean side. If I mark all the way down there, and I take a shaving, you can see it's removed the pencil on this top half, but down at the bottom, last about 3/16, all the pencil lines are still there. That's because there's no cutting edge, and so it's not cutting any further. Now the next time I come through with the plane, it's not cutting anymore. So if I put some more marks on there, doesn't matter how many times I run the plane down there, it's not wearing the shooting board out at all. Now, if you're only working on small parts, you can get away using a bench hook, as long as you've got a bench hook where the hook comes right the way to the edge. And this one here is my Japanese and Western style hook. So we see on the one end we've got the hook on one side of the base, on the other side it's on the other end. So one way round we've got a fence that we can shoot against on our small parts. And even plane an edge on. And we flip it the other way around, it's set up to work at the other edge, so from the left-hand point of view. Now that's handy when you're planing an edge, because you want to make sure you're planing it in the right direction for the grain so you don't get tear out. And be able to choose whether you're going on the left or the right is really handy. And that is the shooting board.